Two. Mata. Aruna.
Mata.
Matimba.
Aina.
Aina.
Matimba.
Manda.
Aishu.
Hashu.
Manda.
All power.
To the leaders.
All power.
To the leaders.
Long live international solidarity. Long live.
Long live.
Long live international solidarity. Long live.
Long live.
Comrades, we have to start. We've delayed and we want to apologize for that delay, but we're now ready to roll. And I want to make a few remarks before we allow the comrades we have come here to welcome and to interact with, to speak also for about 20 to 30 minutes. Let me just do my 10 minutes first. I want to firstly, on behalf of the South African Federation of Trade Unions, the National Executive Committee, whose members are present in the meeting here, and on behalf of the movements that SAFTU is working with, the BDS movement, the Palestine International Solidarity movements, the Budemo president, who is present here, the president of Abahlali Basemjondolo, our comrades from the DRC, also united and working with us in the solidarity movement, in solidarity with the comrades of the DRC. We are here to symbolize that united front of organizations.
Hold the mic up.
I was a short before. Long time ago, I used to pay subscription fees, and my voice is no longer the same. One of the reasons why I must file for compensation against all of the unions and federations I've worked with. So thank you very much. Firstly, welcome, Comrade Jeremy Corbyn. Welcome to the SAFTU head office. Welcome all of the comrades, the stalwarts of our movement, the comrades who have been working very hard to raise the flag of solidarity with the comrades from the Palestine, the social movements that are here. Thank you very much. And I wanted to say, my name is Welinzi Mavavi. I'm the General Secretary of SAFTU. On my right is Comrade Nodebe Goluzipo, Deputy General Secretary of our Federation, SAFTU. On the other side is Comrade Roshan Dadu, who is from the BDS campaign and the Palestinian Solidarity Movement, which we work very closely with. And on the other side of Corbyn Jeremy is Mlungisi Makanya, who is the president of Budemo. The Budemo is the liberation movement of the people of Swaziland. Welcome, and we're happy that you're here, comrades. And Comrade Sbu Zikote, who is coming from the Abahlali Basemjondolo, Comrade General Secretary of Abahlali Basemjondolo. Everybody else that have joined here, comrades, I've mentioned you all, the DRC comrades, everyone that is here. Comrade Jeremy, your presence amongst us is a reminder that the struggle, Comrade Mustafa, you went to another interview.
Yeah.
We welcome you in a very special way, Comrade Mustafa, directly from the Palestine movement and from Palestine itself, and he's going to say a few things at home.
Before me.
Oh, before you. Have you taken over the chairing of the meeting?
He's trying to whisper to you, but you
Thank you very much.
It's fine, it's okay.
If you let him, you will never get it back.
Comrade Jeremy, for decades, we have embodied the spirit of internationalism, of the poor, and solidarity with all of the oppressed people in the whole nation. We have benefited from your relentless campaigns as part of the anti-apartheid movement. You are coming back here when we are celebrating 31 years of our democracy. You have stood firmly with workers and the dispossessed in Britain and across the world. You opposed imperialist wars when that was so unpopular. You defended the refugees and migrants when others scapegoated them. You fought for the national health services when neoliberalism sought to destroy it. Most courageously, you became one of the strongest voices for the Palestinian liberation in the global north, refusing to bend under enormous political pressure. It is precisely because of these principles, your opposition, your commitment to peace and international justice, that you were targeted. The Conservatives, aided by the Labour Party's right media, wage a campaign to vilify you as a force and force you out. The press recycled every slander, exaggerated every internal dispute, and manufactured crises to break your leadership. Even Donald Trump personally attacked you in 2019 during the UK elections, calling you a danger and openly siding with Boris Johnson because you refused to toe the Washington's imperialist line. Today, the Labour Party has been transformed into a mirror of the Conservatives, so much so that many voters can no longer tell the difference between the Labour Party and the Conservatives. This degeneration mirrors what we face here in South Africa. The ANC, once a mighty force of liberation, a force of liberation, a force of the Freedom Charter, underpinned by the central demand that the economy of South Africa shall be shared amongst all of us, has now been transformed. Today, its economic programs are not very dissimilar to those of the Democratic Alliance. Both the ANC and the DA converge on neoliberalism, on austerity, and on corporations. And just like in Britain, our media plays a role echoing the voices of capital, delegitimizing worker struggles, and celebrating those who defend profit over people. Comrade Jeremy, you joined us at a time when South Africa is trapped in what we call the poly crisis, multiple of crises feeding one another and threatening our very survival. We speak about the legacy of apartheid. The roots of our crisis lie deep in the history of colonial conquest and apartheid. For centuries, wealth and land were stolen from the indigenous majority. And apartheid have left behind an institutionalized legacy of mass poverty, inequality, and underdevelopment among black South Africans. Even 30 years into democracy, the structural fault lines of apartheid persist. Most black families remain landless, excluded from the wealth, and trapped in poor schools, poor health care, and poor jobs. Unemployment is breaking all of the world records. You're sitting there in a country which boasts shamefully of being the only country with these levels of unemployment in the whole world, at 43% using the expanded definition of unemployment. This is the home of inequality, and which, according to the PwC, the top CEOs earn over 250 times more than the average worker, while they collect tens of millions. Over 20 million of our people go back into bed hungry every night, whilst we export the best of the food to overseas markets. Corruption is one of the biggest problems, corruption of corporates, but also corruption of the public sector. You are visiting us on a time when we are being pounded by the climate change calamity that is unfolding as we speak in KwaZulu-Natal. This is a precipice on which our country stands. But comrades, we do not despair. Workers and communities are resisting. We are mobilizing against austerity, privatization, and corruption. We are demanding jobs, decent wages, land, housing, and dignity. And since 10 o'clock, the SAFTU leadership have been standing here in this very same hall, plotting a fight-back strategy of the working class. Your visit strengthens us. It reminds us that we are not alone, that the struggles of South Africa's workers are bound to those of the British workers, to Palestinians, to the Cubans, to the Sudanese, to the DRC, to our comrades in Swaziland, to all those who rise against neoliberalism, imperialism, and exploitation. So, dear Comrade Jeremy, we welcome you warmly to South Africa, and we look forward to your words of wisdom and your message of solidarity. Together, let us continue to build a movement that crosses borders and confronts global capitalism head on. Viva Solidarity, viva!
Viva! Viva.
Now, I'm not going to make a mistake of allowing power to be on the floor so that anybody can pick it up. I'm going to allow you, Comrade Mustafa, to speak, and we can only hope that you will speak more about the crisis that is unfolding, the genocide that is claiming hundreds and hundreds of lives all the time. That didn't start on the 7th of October 2 years ago. That has been going on since 1946 and 1947. I don't want to make a long speech to welcome you as well to South Africa, and thank you very much for coming over and be part of us in this important gathering. Thank you. Can I now give you the power to address us and you return it?
I'll make sure to return it to you, not to Jeremy. So thank you so much, dear comrades, dear brothers and sisters. It is really an honor to be with you today. It's my honor to be again in South Africa. I want to start before talking about what we suffer from. Of course, I will not be long because I think the time has to be given to our dear friend Jeremy. But I want to start by thanking you.
Recording in progress.
Thanking you and thanking the people of South Africa for you being in the avant-garde in supporting Palestine. We thank you, and we thank also the state of South Africa for taking the case to the International Court of Justice before anybody else did, and the case of genocide. And that is something so appreciated So many other countries are following now, but nobody will forget that South Africa was in the first line and doing it, and we are not surprised because we all remember what Nelson Mandela used to say. Nelson Mandela used to say that he thought that Palestine will be free before South Africa. And then he said that South Africa will not be completely free till Palestine is free. And he's the one who said a phrase that I keep repeating all the time, that Palestine is the most important human issue of our time. And we have been subjected to apartheid as well. Except maybe I should tell you that in 2006 we were in Bethlehem, and I was then the Minister of Information in the only unity government in Palestine. And I hosted Ronnie Castles, who was also a minister then. And we did a joint press conference in front of the apartheid wall that Israel has built. And I said, what we have in Palestine is also apartheid. And Ronnie corrected me correctly. He said, no, it's not like South Africa. What you have in Palestine is a much worse apartheid than what prevailed in South Africa. And for sure it is. Because in our case, apartheid is combined with ethnic cleansing of the people. And now it is combined with 3 horrible war crimes. The war crime of genocide, the war crime of collective punishment, including starving people and starving children. 90,000 children now in Gaza could die at any moment because they are suffering from severe malnutrition caused by Israel. And we are subjected to ethnic cleansing again. In 1948, Israel forced 70% of the Palestinian people out of their homes, out of their land, becoming refugees. 70% of the population of Gaza that are subjected now to genocide and another ethnic cleansing were already ethnically cleansed in 1948 from 523 communities and villages that were destroyed and erased to the ground by Israel. So, dear comrades and friends, we've been subjected to terrible, terrible crimes in Gaza. But it's not just Gaza. Also in the West Bank where I live, we are subjected to continuous settlers' terror. Few people know that there are settlers' terrorist gangs, similar to those gangs that caused the ethnic cleansing in 1948. These gangs are going all over the West Bank, confiscating land, stealing our land, attacking our properties, destroying houses, burning cars, killing people. 1,000 Palestinians have already been killed since October 7th in the West Bank also. And now the Israeli army has imposed 1,000, imagine 1,000 military checkpoints in this little area that is called the West Bank. They've imposed more than 200 military gates that prevent communities, villages, and towns from leaving or coming in without an Israeli permission. You imagine villages under total siege where people cannot go in or out. Imagine the case of a pregnant woman who needs to get to hospital and cannot do that. Imagine a man who's having a heart attack and cannot get to the hospital because of the military gate that is preventing him from moving. We had no less than 18,000 Palestinians imprisoned since October 7th in the West Bank. They speak about Israeli prisoners that should be released, and I am not against that. But there are only 48 people, but nobody speaks about the 14,000 Palestinian hostages now in Israeli jails, including 400 children, including 3,600 people who are put under the so-called administrative detention, which means they don't know why they are in jail because there has been no charges. Their lawyers don't know why they are in jail. There is no legal process whatsoever. And they're all his hostages as well.
Yeah.
So that is the reality we live in. And we are struggling in every possible way to achieve the simple thing that every people in the world has, which is freedom. Our right to live freely. our right to move around freely, our right to run our economy, our right to have our children go to school and have proper education. And that's what we have been struggling for. And that's why we are continuing to struggle now. I know now that the whole world is changing. And what we see today in this flotilla with 50 ships trying to get to Gaza, with the fact that Netanyahu had to speak in front of an empty hall in the General Assembly, with the fact that there are sanctions campaign and boycott campaigns all over the world, we see that what we have expected, I've been talking about that for 20 years, that what happened in the case of South Africa will happen again in the case of Palestine. And the same boycott, divestment, sanctions campaign, which forced apartheid down here in South Africa, and forced apartheid down also in Palestine. So I want to thank you, but before I finish, I have to make a comment. We hear the most insulting thing. We hear now that they speak about bringing Tony Blair to be the governor of Gaza. Tony Blair out of all people. We, the people who have struggled for 100 years against British colonialism, before we struggled against the Israeli occupation and Israeli oppression, they want us to receive another colonialist to come and govern us.
No way.
That is totally unacceptable, and we will never allow it. And as one British parliamentarian said, the place of this guy is not in Gaza, the place of this guy is in The Hague, where he should be judged for his criminal work in Iraq. Even when Bush apologized for saying the lie of weapons of mass destruction to justify the destruction of Iraq, this man didn't. I don't want to speak about his corruption, this is not my duty, but I want to say that we as people will never accept another time of foreign ruling of us. We are quite capable of ruling ourselves. And finally, I want to say, I want to give you a promise. On behalf of our people, please be sure, we the Palestinian people, as you did, will never give up. No power in this world, is capable of breaking us. We will continue our struggle. We will continue our fight for freedom and justice till we are free. Nothing will stop us. Be assured of that. Every house they have destroyed, we will rebuild. Every school they have destroyed, we will rebuild. Every clinic, and they have destroyed many of the clinics that I run in Gaza. Every clinic they have destroyed, we will rebuild. We will rebuild our future, and we will be free. And I hope we will meet you sometime soon in Palestine, in free Palestine. Thank you.
Awetu Amanda Maibuye Africa Maibuye.
And from the river to the sea,
Palestine will be free.
from the river to the sea,
Palestine will be free.
free, free Palestine,
Free, free Palestine.
free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Long live the struggles of the people of Palestine. Long live!
Long live!
Amata!
Awetu.
Thank you very much, Mustafa, and thank you very much for that wonderful input that we have made to remind us of the fact that we may be looking on the other side some nights, and we confess here, by the way, that there's nothing more daunting and challenging these days than to watch Al Jazeera and to see what is unfolding. But you are here to prick our conscience and to make sure that we renew our own resolves to fight alongside all of you until you are free. Thank you very much again. One more round of applause. Now we're going to move to Comrade Jeremy Corbyn. We're going to allow him to speak up to 30 minutes.
Would be less. I'm just giving you a prompt.
And once that is done, it's going to be a free engagement, a festival of ideas, exchange of ideas, comments that are going to be made by you, interacting with both Comrade Mustafa and Comrade Corbyn, and then we will have until when? Are you allowing me to be in charge of that too? Okay. Yes, we have no power, choice. Real power now. Grasp, on say. So can we head over to Comrade Jeremy?
Here we go.
First of all, thank you very much, and I do apologise, Comrade Chair, for interfering in the due decorum of the meeting. Will I be forgiven?
You're forgiven.
So we can now start the meeting. It's fantastic to be here. I'm not sure if Mustafa is going to be able to stay all afternoon, because I know he's got a lot of other things to do. We're here in South Africa principally working with and supporting the cause of Palestine, and Mustafa and I have been doing a number of meetings and rallies here and in the north, and tomorrow we're going to Cape Town, and after that I'm going to Namibia. I want to say personal huge thank you to Mustafa Barghouti for the way he dedicates his life to the cause of the Palestinian people, the way that he's always able to articulate on any global media very quickly, very succinctly, a very fundamental message about the humanity of the Palestinian people. I've known Mustafa for 25, 30 years. We've been in many, many places together, many, many platforms and many, many events together. It's an absolute pleasure to be working with him, an absolute pleasure to discuss the history of the struggle of the Palestinian people and how that determination and that steadfastness is going to succeed. Palestine will be free. The occupation will end. And next weekend in London on the 11th of October, we're holding what I hope will be the biggest ever solidarity march in support of the Palestinian people in London. We've even got people coming in a flotilla of boats along the Thames to join in the march. We've got cyclists who are setting out on a week-long cycle ride through the country to join the march. We've got people coming from all over the country and indeed from other parts of Europe as well. And so if you have contacts, friends, relatives or whatever, anywhere near London on the 11th of October, tell them whatever they're doing, there's only one thing they should do, and that is go on the streets to show solidarity and support for the people of Palestine. It is indeed the cause of our time, and I want to say a huge thank you to yourselves, all of you here, to the South African trade unions for their continuous and steadfast support for Palestine, and the way that when Mandela came out of prison, he said that the cause of the Palestinian people was vital to him. And when he came to London, he ended up at one meeting that he came to when he was not yet president, came to a meeting in Parliament, and he was meant to be talking about issues facing South Africa and the world. And unfortunately, the attention span of some of my parliamentary colleagues is quite limited, and the meeting started sort of breaking up and they started disappearing. And so there was only two people left in the meeting. And his aide said, look, it's okay, you can go now, there's only two people left. He said, no, I'll talk to whoever's left here. Let's move to another table. So we sat down, the three of us together, Mandela, Tony Benn and me, to have a chat for a while. And it was the most educative discussion I'd had for a very long time. And of course, the global issues like Palestine came up during that discussion. So I want to say thank you for all that you've been through in the fight against apartheid, to still have the energy, the space, the courage and the determination to support the Palestinian people. And when South Africa took the case to the International Court of Justice, I went to the International Court of Justice to observe the hearing. And it was quite amazing to be there in the Palace of Peace in The Hague, which is a beautiful building, on a desperately cold, freezing day, just listening to the wonderful presentation, the articulation of the cause of the Palestinian people, and the whole legal arguments that go with it. And it was just utterly astonishing. And I was just thinking then, all the South African people went through to throw off the Group Areas Act, the pass laws, the banning orders, the imprisonment, the shootings, and all the vile things that the apartheid regime did over the entirety of its existence, finally to be overthrown. And it was South Africa that was the first, and that stage only country in the world to take legal action against Israel. So that is not just the credit of the South African government at that moment, but also to all the people of South Africa who supported that action. Because whilst the legal arguments will no doubt rumble on for years, these things always do, the fact of taking the action woke up the whole world to the reality of what the genocide is in Gaza. Thank you, South Africa. Thank you. And the reality in Gaza, as Mustafa has explained, is abominable beyond belief. I introduced a private member's bill into Parliament to ask that the British government's complicity in all this be exposed. And so I asked for a Chilcot-style inquiry. Chilcot was the inquiry headed by Sir John Chilcot into Britain's activities in the Iraq War, led by Tony Blair. And my bill got through its first stage, but didn't get much further than that, and it was indeed then blocked at the second stage in Parliament. I wasn't terribly surprised by that, but it was blocked at the second stage. And so I said, okay, I understand what you're doing. I don't care. We will set up our own inquiry instead. So through the Peace and Justice Project, we set up the Gaza Tribunal over 2 days. We couldn't afford to do anything longer than that. And we had 29 expert witnesses, legal, medical, aid workers, diplomatic, and many, many others. And they told us in excruciating detail what it was like being a doctor without access to antiseptic, anaesthetic, proper equipment or anything, having to operate on a sick child to try and save the life. And then they were almost in tears as they're giving us this information. And then we heard from forensic architects about the systematic bombing of Gaza City, making way for the Riviera plan that Donald Trump is so keen on, and telling us that when these buildings are blown up by remote-controlled explosives on AI-generated vehicles, the buildings are blown up, sometimes there are people in them, they're killed, their bodies lie in the rubble, and that rubble will then be the foundations of goodness knows what next. It is beyond disgusting that whatever resort they have in mind, it'll never be built, I'm sure, but if it was to be built, it would be built literally on the bodies of Palestinian people. This is beyond disgusting in the world stage, and that's why we've got to stand together with the Palestinian people. And as Mustafa said at the conclusion of his wonderful speech, that the idea that somehow or other the rest of the world has got to take over Gaza, take over the West Bank and take over administration, well, that strikes me as a bit similar to those lines on maps all over the Middle East, those lines all over Africa drawn at the Congress of Berlin in 1884, those lines that were drawn at Versailles to draw out the boundaries of the modern states of the Middle East. And Tony Blair being appointed as some kind of colonial viceroy to manage Gaza, it's beyond parody, actually. It belongs in a Gilbert and Sullivan opera, but except it's not funny, it's tragic what's going on. No way should any European power be involved in the administration of Gaza. No way should any of those be involved. We need the withdrawal of the troops, and we need the ability of the UN Relief and Works Agency to deliver food, water, medicine, and all the things that they're actually very good at delivering. And they should, instead of being denigrated as they have been for the past years, they should be welcomed and supported for the bravery and the very large number of their workers who've been killed by Israeli bombardment, along with journalists, aid workers, and so many others, and of course 60,000 Palestinian people whose names we know of. We don't know the names of all the others. So thank you for all you do for Palestine. And I must say, every time I look on the social media and see the size of demonstrations in Johannesburg, in Cape Town, or in other places all across South Africa in support of Palestine, I think, fantastic. You are showing the way. You're giving us all an inspiration around the world. And so thank you again for all that you do. I was really pleased to be able to come here today because I wanted to be also listening to what you have to say about how we develop things around the world and what solidarity means. I'm part of the Progressive International grouping, which is a coming together of radical governments and radical parties around the world, set up to bring people together and particularly to promote the Hague Group of countries in solidarity with the people of Palestine. And one of our staff members, David Adler, is on the flotilla at the moment sailing towards Gaza to deliver aid and medicine. And he just sent me a message today saying they're making good progress, they're getting nearer and nearer, and he's astonished at the levels of support around the world for it. And so that is practical action being taken by him and by many, many others, and many trade unionists from around the world. Because the international solidarity of the trade union movement in support of the Palestinian people is something that most of our media choose not to report. But I want to hear it for the Italian unions and the Italian dock workers and the Italians that struck in order to force their government's hand. Likewise, American, Australian, British and many other trade unions around the world have done whatever solidarity action they can mount, and it is very important to do that and support the Palestinian unions as well, because trade unionism has to be international if it's to mean anything. All of the employers and the market forces and the economic pressures on us are all globally organised. Trade unions need to be equally globally organised and equally internationally minded in what they do. That to me is a very, very important basis of so much of what we do. I was a trade union organiser before I became a Member of Parliament. I was organising in the public sector, mainly school meals workers, road sweepers, home helps, and all people who were low paid in the public sector. And we won a lot of demands. We won wage increases, we won education opportunities, we won an awful lot of things. They were all threatened by privatisation, by the Reaganomics of the 70s and 1980s. And whilst my union was fully aware of the dangers of the IMF-inspired programme of cuts that the Labour government at that time fell for, that was the 1974 to 79 Labour government, and the privatisation that followed, too many trade unions felt they could pass by on the other side and didn't need to be involved in the political debate and the political arguments. Politics is about people's lives. Trade unions cannot avoid the political issues and the economic issues that are so important in our lives, and they should never do that. And so we then have to start looking at ourselves as trade unionists of where we are at the moment and what we try to achieve. I've been working with the International Transport Workers Federation on lots of issues, and through our project, the Peace and Justice Project, we've worked very closely with them through their council and their organisation in Mexico. Lara Alvarez, my wife, is the international organiser for Peace and Justice Project, and after a lot of negotiation, they've now achieved something quite significant, which is an agreement of understanding with the government of Mexico on the right of workers in the transport sector, the hotel sector, and the tourist sector to be members of unions. That might sound not very much, but actually, in terms of the growth of the tourist industry and the enormous growth of the rail sector in Mexico, that is of massive significance. And so it is about getting people into unions, having the facility to organise, and the importance of them. But we have to face it that all around the world, union members tend not to be the youngest people in the workplace. They tend not to be the youngest demographic within our society. And that has to change. Now that is partly because the union strength came from the industrial sector, and in most countries the industrial sector might be very productive, but in terms of the levels of employment is much less than it used to be through technology and changes that have brought that about, and through the way in which so much work is now contracted out. Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand that cars are no longer made in one place by one company. They're actually made by parts that come from all over the world, as indeed any other industrial product is. So we have to be much better aware and much better organised to organise all the way through the supply chain, not just at the final point of assembly and production. But there's then the other area of the growth of work has been in the gig economy around the world. People that work for Uber Eats, for Deliveroo, for Amazon, Starbucks, and so many others. Many of them on very poor conditions, many of them in insecure work, many of them even on 0 hours contracts, so they don't know what their income is going to be. And they're often young workers, they're often people who are marginalised in society, who don't have a settled immigration status in any country anywhere in the world. And they are grotesquely exploited. And if union membership is to mean anything, it means bringing those people into union membership and providing them with the organising ability and the resources in order to develop the union structures there to confront these very, very wealthy global platform companies that actually are now the biggest factor in world economics. We need to be able to understand that, to bring those sisters and brothers into membership, but above all to educate them as well into union organisation and union solidarity, and that is what we have to be doing. But I said earlier on, just a couple of minutes ago, that part of the whole issue was about political education and understanding, and that is absolutely key to it. The levels of unemployment you're now facing in South Africa are appalling by any standards anywhere in the world, and that means many people, presumably I guess mainly young people, are growing up without any knowledge of what unions are for or what they do, and no experience of trade unions either, because they're not in a workplace to achieve it. So we need to think perhaps very carefully and sometimes totally out of the box about what union membership should be. And some of our unions, particularly the biggest union in Britain, Unite the Union, when Len McCluskey was General Secretary, who was, by the way, a very good friend of mine, they set up the idea of community branches and community members so that people could join the union in work. They remained in the union when they're out of work, and they could remain as community members. Thus, they weren't lost to the trade union movement or to the labour movement, but could still have their voice and take part in it. And I think it's important that we think in those terms. I know you do a lot of that already in South Africa, but I do think these are areas we need to think about very, very seriously. And that's what I want to hear about this afternoon, if you're good enough to tell me about what you're doing in those kind of areas, because it is about our collective solidarity and our collective organisation. Our planet is faced with many, many issues. We're faced with the scourge of war, the war in Ukraine, the war in Palestine, the war in Sudan, the war in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the war in Yemen, and even issues like the Indonesian assaults on Papua New Guinea, and issues like that all around the world. And we're told that these are somehow or other important and there's no other way forward other than a war. Yes, there is. There is a way forward, and that is you start looking at the causes of war and look for a solution to them. So that means unashamedly arguing for a ceasefire in Ukraine and also exposing the massive profits made by the arms trade and the arms industry out of that conflict, and indeed out of all the other conflicts. And through our project, the Peace and Justice Project, we produced a book last year called The Monstrous Anger of the Guns. It's based on a First World War poem by Wilfred Owen called Anthem for a Doomed Youth, and he said, "What passing bells for those who die as cattle, only the monstrous anger of the guns." And so we wanted to expose the power of the arms industry and the arms trade. That means calling for peace around the world. It means respecting international law and institutions, and it means absolutely solidarity with the people of Palestine who are victims of the arms trade, of aggression, of occupation, and now of genocide. And so the trade union movement cannot be an innocent bystander in this. We've got to take part in it all and be that demand. We're also faced with global economic inequality, which is getting worse. The levels of maldistribution of wealth and power have never been greater in the world. The super rich, not just in this country, but in Europe, in North America, and globally, that actually are the dominant forces in the world's economy. No one country can confront that on their own. No one country can deal with the tax arrangements that big business takes in order to avoid taxation in one dominion after another. It's important that we be a pressure point for global solidarity to make sure those big companies do pay the taxes that are necessary to pay for health and education and housing and environment and sustainability that the rest of the world so desperately needs. The environmental crisis is here, it's real, it's now. Global warming is taking place. The loss of biodiversity is serious and huge. The increase in the number of floods around the world is obvious what is happening. That's not going to be sorted out by free market economics. It just endlessly exploits. It's only going to be sorted out by the management and preservation of resources and the sharing of wealth, which means, it might sound a strange thing to say in this meeting, but it means campaigning for a shorter working week. It means campaigning for a shorter working week on the same wages, so that becomes a form of redistribution of wealth. And so those are just some of the issues that I wanted to think about and talk to you about. We have a responsibility as inheritors of the traditions of our parties and our unions to educate the next generation, to bring them forward and to bring them into union membership and bring them into an understanding of global economics as well as the economics of their own country. We've been through political problems in my country, in Britain. I became leader of the Labour Party in 2015. I became leader of the Labour Party because I got the votes of people who were not in the hierarchy of the Labour Party and certainly not members of Parliament and so on. And so I was from the very start in a very isolated position within the structures that we had. But I want to say a huge thank you to all those people that stood by, gave support, and gave solidarity. And you know what? When we were able to put forward a relatively radical manifesto in the 2017 election, we got, and I'm very proud of this, the highest ever vote that Labour has got this century on a programme of redistribution of wealth and power, public ownership and sustainability. As you know, I stepped down as leader of the Labour Party in 2020, and I was then suspended from membership of the Parliamentary Labour Party and then denied the right to stand as a Labour candidate in the general election that happened in 2024. And the party decided that I wasn't fit to be a member of Parliament. And so I said that's very unfair, not to me, but I think the people of my area should be able to decide for themselves who their member of Parliament is. So I presented myself as an independent and we won with an enormous majority because people wanted support. And since then, yes, there have been a few problems, but we're going to overcome them. Setting up an alternative at the moment called yourparty.uk, and I'm determined that this will be a grassroots-based, accountable, democratic organisation that will be based on community campaigning and community solidarity, based on union membership, based on campaigns for clean water, for health centres, for libraries, for housing, and all the things that we care deeply about, and of course a campaigning force for peace rather than war around the world. And I've asked that every branch that we set up has in its rule book that every month it must have at least one open public event in which everybody in their community can come and maybe confront them with issues and ideas, but above all be answerable to and part of the community. It's not about setting up bureaucratic hierarchies to control what everybody else thinks and does. That to me is the mobilisation of popular opinion. The alternative is what? The far-right racists that are rising all over Europe and North America, the nationalists that are rising all over the world, attacking minorities, blaming refugees, blaming migrants, always blaming somebody else for the problems. I listened to Nigel Farage. There is no problem anywhere in the world that isn't caused by desperate people trying to cross the English Channel in a boat because they've got nowhere else to go. what has happened to our humanity that we allow that kind of language to go unchallenged in our society? Well, none of us are going to allow that. None of us are going to allow refugees who are victims of wars and human rights abuses to become the victims of that kind of language. It's the basic human solidarity that we need. It was your basic human solidarity which defeated apartheid in South Africa. It's your basic human solidarity which will ensure the Palestinian people win with the support of progressive people all over the world. Let's not be afraid of our voices. Let's not be nervous about our voices. Let's be proud of our identity, proud of our ideology, and proud of our determination to bring about a world of peace, a world of justice, a world fit for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Comrade Jeremy. This mic is not
He
very
doesn't
good.
like you, eh?
Doesn't like me at all.
But we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah. Let me resort back to my subscribed voice. Thank you very much for that inspiring input touching the calamity that is unfolding in Palestine, unfolding in the DRC, in the Sudan, and every other part of the world, and touching the calamity of the climate change, touching the need for us to be in solidarity to rebuild the trade union movements in solidarity with other organs of the people's power, as we are attempting to do today in the Federation SAFTU. We have listened very carefully, and I'm sure all of you have issues you want to raise, you want to make comments, you want to engage, and you want to share thoughts and memories about the unfolding human tragedy in the whole world, not just in the countries that we have mentioned. We're now going to have that moment to speak and to be heard, to be recorded as part of this historic engagement, and so that hopefully your voices can be multiplied in every platform where we can. So comrades, let me see those hands. And I'm going to have a bias. Everyone has a bias. I'm going to ask the man who is older than us all here first.
That's me.
No, it's not you. Comrade Ronnie Casserels have raised the flag of the Palestinian people for all of his life since he returned back from exile in 1990. Has been their face, has been ridiculed, have been threatened, have been insulted, have been isolated, but he has stood firm, not only for Palestine, but for ordinary workers of South Africa. And I wanted to give him the first honor to engage and to share thoughts. Not to do a keynote address, that has been done. But to share your thoughts briefly, Comrade Ronnie. Please allow me to command you once in my life.
Aye, sir. Well, of course, Comrade Vavi, this is a really historic occasion. Historic occasions aren't only when we have a hall of 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 people. We've all been in that situation, my comrades. And it's not only when we're at an outdoor rally. So, I've never been good at arithmetic, Jeremy, but maybe 80 of us. What you've brought together Comrade Varvey, our comrades say this, Comrade Jeremy, Comrade Mustafa. I'm actually so fortunate to know both the comrades and to have worked with them, and still do, although you all know me as a Madala these days. But it is really historic. And the assembly here is absolutely extraordinary in terms of who these comrades represent, what they represent, their absolute incredible commitment and leadership. And from that point of view, there's such a merging of internationalists here. And of course, Palestine is ever in our thoughts, as Comrade Jeremy and so many non-Palestinians, Mandela and so many others amongst them, Mustafa, always say we are all Palestinians, we're all Gaza, we're all human beings struggling for the better world. And Comrade Jeremy, your statement, we are many, they are few, which he has quoted many times, and he quotes from an outstanding English poet called Shelley, and we of the left call him Red Shelley, and he used that in his incredible poem after a massacre in Britain so long ago. And that's what this represents. So from that point of view, it's wonderful to be here with you. It's wonderful the way you've been received. I'm on my way to an epic speech here of proportions. I'm talking about the length which you said I should get into. I just, perhaps if I may, put a question, try and warm comrades up and put questions and comments. But one at present, in terms of where we are, and it's so historic, and it's so barbaric, and we know the saying socialism or barbarism, but there's strange things happening, and there are opportunities galore, and there are dangers, incredibly so, not just to people in Gaza and the West Bank and Palestine, but everywhere in the world, everywhere. What do both of you make of this mumbo jumbo in Europe, where we see Starmer, your dear friend Jeremy, and we see Macron and others who are now declaring that they are for Palestine, and of course the two-state issue, and there's the recognition. What is your analysis in terms of what's causing that? I think in a sense we all know it's the outstanding international solidarity that's soaring and reaching such heights, and we're going to assist you through all our contacts internationally and in Britain and so on, Jeremy, for next weekend. I think the 11th, was it? What happened in Italy just a few days ago is so incredible, and all of us must have seen these pictures from all the cities of Italy, quite unimaginable. So the many of the world are rising like lions. How are you both seeing the attempts to diffuse this in terms of, if we just bring it down to what's cooking with Starmer and Macron, etc., and of course the isolation of Trump and what's his particular position and what we have to overcome? Because although we say imperialism is in decline, it's so dangerous as it's been in the 30s and the 40s and pre-1914 and so on. So we're facing the most daunting challenges today for the Palestinians, of course, for all humanity. And Comrade Varvey, you put it so well to our comrades here in your address. the complexities in South Africa, but also the similarities that we have to overcome. So thanks very much. Thank you, Comrade Commander.
Thank you, Comrade Ronnie. Thank you very much, Comrade Ronnie, for that again. And we wish that we could have more time and that we will organize more time with you, because we know what you represent and we know that you truly represent what in our country we call the well of knowledge and wisdom about our own struggles and the struggles of our people all over the world. Don't you dare take a chance and think that you are Ronnie Castle yourselves now. Only he will have been allowed to speak at length because he's older than many people, including the former presidents outside Tata Nelson Mandela. All others are his junior, literally. And Comrade Ronnie was there. There's a song we sing here, Ronnie wayekhona emzabalazweni, meaning that Ronnie was in the struggle against apartheid and colonialism before all of us. Thank you very much. We going to allow now a spread of voices before we allow the two comrades to respond. I'm going to have another bias to our SAFTU comrades, the president of Kiusa, one of the SAFTU unions, Mamekus Bay. I'll be strict on time now. We are not broadcasting.
Thank you, Comrade Mustafa. Thank you, Comrade Jeremy. I think insofar as the 11th of October, I think that's a very important demonstration, especially in the context of the mobilization that we've seen. In Germany itself, where comrades of the Linke have, mobilized, there was about 20,000 people in a pro-Palestinian solidarity demonstration. I think that's important because when I was there, I think this year, last year for May Day, the harassment in the demonstration just for people for daring to support Palestine was incredible. We were just being arrested for every little slogan and so on and so on. So I think that the comrades in Britain are mobilizing that is very important. I was just communicating with our comrades from Socialist Alternative there. They are saying that no, they'll most certainly also be behind that. Now, just in terms of the issues that I think were raised here, there's the rise of racism, not only there, but actually here, and it takes the form of xenophobia. And I think it's important because comrades here need to understand, as we always emphasize, there is no working class that will ever win anything for as long as it is divided. They're using xenophobia to weaken our already weakened movement precisely so that they can continue exploitation. And whenever as a working class movement, we concede. Because what is all this right-wing xenophobic mobilizations about? You strip a section of the working class of all their rights. What is the consequence? There's no better gift to the capitalists than that and so on. And I do think that maybe, Comrade Jeremy, there will be mobilizations around these things. Maybe an international day of action against racism, against xenophobia, but lastly also to confront the issues that are fueling these issues. And I think the proposal about demanding a reduction of a working week, because a comrade here said earlier on, is not just about the fact that industries are moving somewhere. This fourth industrial revolution means most of our jobs here are technologically redundant in their millions. I can't see how we'll ever create jobs for all without reducing a working week, probably by half. And I think that has got to be our demand. We resolved on factory occupations of the mines. We're here to actually plan to concretize that. And I think we're going to need support as we are taking those things, because I do think that the struggle against the mass chronic unemployment is going to have to be central, because without dealing decisively with the poverty of the black working class, you can't do away with this right-wing racism. But I think, Chair, as I yield to you, we can't do with half measures. I think the issue of capitalism, the issue of socialism must be at the center of our organizing, because there's a crisis of capitalism, overcapacity, overproduction. We are just now discussing a closure of the biggest steel industry. Why? Because of, overproduction there. There's 500 million tons of steel, more than the market can take internationally. A lot of that steel is being dumped here and is devastating the steel industry. The biggest steel manufacturer is now closing. The second biggest steel manufacturer, Highfield Steel, is gone. And that's the problem. So I think that it's either socialism or the barbarism that we see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Don't bring it back to me. Oh, for a moment, I'm going to allow other comrades to now freely interact. All of us here, comrades, whether we from the Sudan, from the DRC, from Swaziland, from South to affiliates, more of us, from Abahlali Basemjondolo, from wherever other social movements that are represented here. Let's exchange.
Thanks, Comrade Vago. Comrades, I am a son of the trade union movement. I was expelled and then became a union organizer. Expelled from becoming a teacher. Ironically, my last union job was in the teachers' union. Comrade Vavi, my question to Comrade Jeremy and Comrade Barghouti is the role of the public broadcaster. They were used to stitch up Comrade Jeremy. He was about to win, and the collaboration between the Zionists and the public broadcaster was critical. This morning, our public broadcaster just wrote to us. I'm an activist, I work elsewhere, but I'm an activist with the local branch of the PDS called Palestine Solidarity Alliance. That's our branch. And we're organizing a number of groups, and we were scheduled to meet this morning with the SABC. At 9 o'clock this morning, they said that the meeting can't go on. I don't know. Maybe they know you guys are around. So I just want to know, of course, we're holding them to the fire. We will see when they want to meet. But the public broadcaster ignores the genocide or pretends to be both-sidism, to be equal in this genocide. They will be failing us. So I'd like to hear that from you, comrades, please.
Comrades, my question is simple. My name is Sunny Morgan. I'm with the PSA, Palestinian Solidarity Alliance. My question is to both Comrade Mustafa and Comrade Jeremy. It's quite simple. How do we connect the unions of South Africa to the struggle in Palestine through calling for a boycott of the coal that goes from Glencore, from Richards Bay Coal Terminal, that goes to Israel? We monitor ships on a daily basis that come and load coal here, 170,000 tons or 1.7 million tons that goes from Richards Bay up the coast to Israel. We've been calling for a boycott of Glencore. We've been calling for no coal for the genocide for ages. So how do we encourage our unions here to support that call? And we have a small stat. It may be big, the amount of coal in Israel is 17% of the coal, but it's 0.2% of the coal in South Africa. So there won't be job losses simply because other people are waiting in line for that coal. But we seem to be knocking on closed doors when we have that conversation, and unions are not taking that message seriously. How do we use your experience, Comrade Jeremy, to call for that and to encourage our unions to do it effectively? Oops. Use that one.
This guy's recording.
Oh, this mic doesn't work.
It's for recording.
I'd like to start off with saying, with no offense to Ronnie, I think I represent a little bit of a younger audience, but
That's why we're sitting together.
I hope not to ask a childish question.
Pretty strong alliance of you two over there.
I wanted to ask a question about Palestine and a question about the left, but since Comrade Mustafa's here, I'll dedicate the Palestinian question to him. So firstly, I understand you were arrested in 1982 protesting outside of the South African embassy in London for a free South Africa. And what I want to get from you is your view of what South Africa's done post the apartheid struggle, and if South Africa's lived up to your conceptualization of this national liberation movement, and whether or not you've been disappointed or impressed by this exercise. And then my question on the Palestinian question is, there's often parallels drawn between South Africa and Palestine, apartheid South Africa and Palestine. And looking at post-liberation challenges in South Africa, from corruption to solving economic apartheid, what are the most crucial lessons, both positive and negative, that a future Palestine can learn from South Africa? Thank you.
I don't want to go all the way without giving you a chance to respond. Are you ready to respond, or can you take more comments?
Oh.
Dr. Mustafa?
I'm ready, yes. You want me to start?
Okay.
This is someone's going to start showing.
I'm coming to you, Comrade Vadan.
Thank you so much. Thank you. The first question is from Ronnie about the recognitions. Of course, these recognitions came very late, but we had to welcome them because they are about why they are important. Because, first of all, they affirm the right of self-determination of the Palestinian people, and they negate a very horrible Israeli law that was passed before the 7th of October, which said that the right of self-determination in Palestine, in historic Palestine, is exclusive for Jewish people. Consolidating, you faced here white supremacy. We are facing Jewish supremacy. And it has to be named as it is.
Yes.
With all these Messianic groups that are using religion even to promote this supremacy. So from that perspective, it's positive. But it's late, for sure, and it's not enough. And what we are demanding from these countries is not just to recognize, especially that some of them, like France and Britain, are giving conditional recognition. Like in France, they say we will not have an ambassador till this and this happens, and Starmer also has his own conditions. What we demand is not just recognitions, what we demand are sanctions on Israel to change the reality.
Yes.
Because recognition on its own will not change the reality, and the reality is that Israel is killing the two states option and the idea of a Palestinian state every day with their settlements. But the issue is even bigger than that. Not only we want sanctions, we don't want to diffuse our struggle again. Because it has been diffused already once through Oslo Agreement. And you know I've been in opposition to Oslo Agreement all the time.
Yeah.
In Oslo, before Oslo happened, we had a fantastic Palestinian uprising. The first uprising, the Intifada, which changed the balance of power. And Israel could not continue to rule us in the same way. And it was diffused, unfortunately, by Oslo Agreement, which unfortunately allowed the settlements to continue to be built. Today, we have unbelievable Palestinian sacrifices. You know, let me tell you, I didn't say that before. We lost up to now in Gaza 11% of the population between people killed or injured, including 20,000 children killed. 11%. Apply that to South Africa, you would be talking about 6 million people killed or injured in the course of less than 2 years. They throw on us in Gaza no less than 160,000 tons of explosives. It is 76 kilograms of explosives for each man, woman, and child. more than 8 times the explosive power of Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear bombs. So we've sacrificed a lot, and now we see an international uprising. I call it an international uprising. What Jeremy described in Italy, what's happening in Britain, what's happening everywhere. And my worry is that Trump and some of these Western governments are going to try to diffuse this international uprising and to diffuse the results of our struggle. And that's why I call on you and I say sanctions should continue. Even if there is a ceasefire, sanctions should continue till there is an end of apartheid, till there is an end of occupation, till there is an end of the injustice in Palestine, until Palestinians are given the right of self-determination completely and totally. The second question, which was directed at me, I think, to me, was about what should we learn from South Africa. Unfortunately, the challenges you faced after apartheid was down, we are facing even before apartheid is down. And specifically, I'll be frank, comrades, and allow me to say that. Because we have lack of democracy internally in the Palestinian movement. We haven't had elections for 20 years. And that weakens us and weakens the Palestinians. And that is the main reason why we have internal division. So what we learned from you is 2 things, and I always repeat that. First of all, the unity. Unity of struggle is so important. And it was essential in your case to succeed in your struggle. But second, what we need is collective leadership. Unified leadership, but collective leadership. Now, Mandela was not negotiating on his own. He had to listen to his comrades about every step. And third, Mandela, that's what we should also learn. Mandela, when he negotiated, he insisted on one principle. Before we talk about any other thing, one man or one woman, one vote. In our case, the mistake that was done in the past is that they agreed on agreements without insisting on the first principle, which is end occupation, end Israeli occupation of Palestinian land. And I think that these are the things we should learn from. But the most important thing for me, in addition to our struggle against Israel, internally, we are also struggling very hard to have internal Palestinian democracy, to give the people the right to choose their leaders freely and democratically. If we have that, this will make us much, much, much stronger in our struggle.
I'll pass the mic around.
I'll come back later. Just very briefly, as you understand. First of all, thanks for the questions. They're all actually really good, and they could all take up a great deal of time. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you to Ronnie Caswells for not just what he said today, Ronnie, but everything you've done all your life. You've been the most fantastic comrade in solidarity with people all over the world. Whatever the personal price to you, Ronnie, you're an example to all of us. Whenever I was under attack any time, all I had to look for was a message from Ronnie Caswells, and it was always there. Ronnie, thank you. Points that Ronnie made about the Italian working class and others coming up in solidarity with the people of Palestine is very important. But I think in some ways the more important point he made was that we're in a kind of pre-1914 situation around the world with countries fighting over everybody else's natural resources and lots of interlocking military arrangements which could easily spill over into something far, far worse. That's why it's so essential to get a ceasefire in the war with Ukraine, to stop that thing spreading over much wider, and also to recognise that nuclear weapons are now available to a number of countries around the world, and why it's also important that the left all around the world campaign for the global ban on nuclear weapons, the getting rid of all nuclear weapons all around the world. I was in Japan in August for the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It was a deeply moving occasion, but the most impressive speech was by a 94-year-old survivor of Hiroshima who just pleaded with us, saying, please rid the world of nuclear weapons. If you can pass an international agreement to rid the world of landmines and of chemical weapons, with their problems, I know, but nevertheless you can do it. You can do exactly the same with nuclear weapons. South Africa led the way to getting a nuclear weapons-free zone in Africa by its abolition of its own nuclear weapons. Others can do exactly the same, and we should be pushing very hard on that. On the other questions that were risen concerning the rise of racism in our society, I can't comment on everything that's going on in South Africa. I'm not here enough to know, but I do try and follow things from outside. But what I do see is the horrifying rise of racism in North America and across Europe at the present time, where horrible individual acts of racist attacks take place all over Europe, usually directed towards asylum seekers, but not always, very heavily directed towards religious minorities or religious groupings, so the rise of Islamophobia, the rise of some random acts of anti-Semitism across Europe, and other things are quite disgusting and quite revolting. We have to obviously condemn those, but we have to stand together with those that are victims of any form of racism that exists in our society of any sort. And it is about the issues of social justice, because if the left can't offer hope for those people living a poor existence, living in bad housing, living in grotesque levels of exploitation, then the nationalist right are going to give them the message it's always somebody else's fault, and it's always some other group's fault. In Britain, Farage does it all the time. Every conceivable problem in the country is blamed on boat people coming from Calais. It's illogical, it's mad, it's nonsense, it's crazy, but it gets a hearing because nobody else is offering a way out of the cycle of low pay, poverty, high rents, unemployment, low pay, high rents, unemployment, and so on. If the left can't offer a way out of that, then the right are going to fill up that in exactly the same way that the far right did in Europe in the 1920s and 1930s. It's that serious. We have to be united in our economic thinking as well as our thinking of social justice within our society. And the issue that was raised, which I thought was a very interesting question, the third one, was the role of public sector broadcasting. Thank you for that question. In Britain we have the BBC, and South African broadcasting was set up on a broadly similar kind of model. There's a quasi-independent public sector broadcasting which is supposed to educate and inform. I have question marks about the news values of most news corporations, and I think they have to be challenged all the time. They tend to always say that politics is what goes on in parliaments and what goes on in heavily intellectual discussions. There's a kind of rubric that most British newspapers and most broadcasters almost never report on demonstrations that are taking place. So the credibility of having 100,000 people on the streets is often completely ignored in favour of a discussion between three politicians who are often totally removed from any kind of struggle of any sort. And so it is up to us to question and challenge the power of the media, but also to use our own social media and our own media outlets in order to get through and educate people. What I would also say is we need a popular way of educating people on the history of working class movements, the history of struggles, and the history of that unity, because it's always taught in conventional media and conventional history teaching as disempowering of popular movements, whereas the reality is it's popular movements that bring about change, that brought independence to so many countries in Africa, that brought about the end of apartheid in South Africa, that brought about enormous social changes in every country in Europe. It's that lack of teaching and understanding of history that is so very, very important. The last point was raised, or the last 2 points rather, was one on issue of coal exports. We've got people here in this room, Richard Pithouse from Progressive International is working very hard on these issues as Progressive International. My great friend Steve Faulkner does so much to educate and inform people in so many ways. The issue of exports to Israel is being monitored very closely by Progressive International. How? Through dock workers all over the world who are telling us what's going on. So we're able in some cases to track those exports. But South Africa has so brilliantly led the way on the legal action against Israel and its genocidal acts in Gaza. Another move would be to lead the way by saying no more coal exports to Israel, because that is what is there. So we need to get that message across as wide as we can. I was brought up to be opposed to apartheid in every form. I've never forgotten my mother in tears at the time of the Sharpeville shooting in 1960, telling us that we were never to have any South African goods in our house until apartheid was gone. And that's how I was brought up. So that was a good education. And yes, we did mount the anti-apartheid movement in Britain. It wasn't always big, it wasn't always popular. At one time it was very much a very small minority of people. In the 1970s it wasn't massive demonstrations. That all came much later. It wasn't that popular that early on. And whatever we achieved was nothing compared to the sacrifices and the murder of people like Steve Biko, Chris Hani and so many others in South Africa. But what we did do was push for the sporting boycott of South Africa. I remember opposing the Springbok tour and in 1968-69 period, and then of course the Stop the 70 tour campaign, and eventually the isolation of South African sports people. Did it economically make much difference to South Africa? No. It wasn't, nobody ever thought it would, but it did make a big dent on the psyche of the white supremacist regime that ran South Africa at that time, in exactly the same way that last week in Wembley, the Wembley Arena, there was a massive concert for Palestine in which Eric Cantona spoke, the former Manchester United player. I forgive Eric Cantona many things, including playing for Manchester United. I'm very generous. He made an absolutely brilliant speech saying that this was the time for the footballing world to say no to Israel's participation in European football and no to Israel's participation in international football. And so there is something being launched today, a sort of global email campaign to both the European and global footballing authorities to say Israel must be removed from competition in the World Cup and in the European issues. There is the Champions League issue in Europe where Maccabi Haifa are due to play Aston Villa in Birmingham in November. There's a massive campaign already in Birmingham to have that match cancelled altogether because they say Aston Villa should not be playing this club. And having a sporting boycott would help a great deal, and I think it's something that we should push on very hard. It's not up to me to comment on everything that goes on in South Africa. All I would say is that the levels of inequality and poverty and injustice and levels of unemployment are completely unsustainable. There has to be an economic change. There has to be an economic change. Poverty is wrong. Poverty is also a massive waste of resources. How many engineers, architects, poets, writers, doctors and so on are lost to all of us because the child is so poor, they don't achieve in school, they don't get the chances, they don't get the education. Investing in education, investing in children, investing in decent housing, investing in decent jobs for young people brings benefits to all of us. It's not a cost to all of us, it's a benefit to all of us. Let's approach the world on the basis that every human being matters and we're not going to discard them on the altar of free market economics.
You avoided one question.
What's that one? Arsenal?
You are arrested.
Oh, sorry, yes.
You got arrested for being ungovernable.
Well, you've found that already. Yes, I was arrested outside South Africa House. It was actually quite funny because I got arrested for being in front of South Africa House when the police didn't want us to be there. And we get to the police station and they said to me, okay, we're going to charge you. And I said, charge me with what? And I was assuming I was going to be charged with breach of the peace, etc., disobeying police order, something like that. They said, no, we're charging you under the Diplomatic Immunities Act. I said, what? the police officer clearly didn't know what he was talking about. So he reads this piece of paper like this. He said, Mr. Corbyn, I hereby charge you under the Diplomatic Immunities Act of 18 something or other for behaving in a way that is deleterious to our relations with a foreign mission. How do you plead? I said, you what? He said, it says here you've been insulting to South Africa House. How do you plead? I said, well look, can you bear with me for a moment? I've come here to be as insulting as possible. But I'm not going to do you the favour of pleading guilty. I'm pleading innocent because I've got every right to be here and do that, as did all the other defendants. We fought the case, we won the case, we were given compensation for wrongfully being held in a police station, and we gave all that money to the African National Congress struggle to end apartheid.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I wanted that aspect to come out. Thank you for asking that question. We're going to take another round, but we're going to try to close the discussion by 4:30. Comrade Jeremy has another appointment at 5 in Rosebank. So we take 15-20 minutes to go there this time of the traffic. Comrade Rendani, another president of SAFTU Union, Psycho, you're going to have to open this round. Over to you. Can somebody help me?
Yeah, thank you, GS. Welcome, Comrade Jeremy. It's a great honor to meet you in person. Yeah, my question will emanate from your article that you wrote on Brazil titled Lula's Victory is a Testament to Solidarity. I've utilized some extract during my address in Brazil last month during the CTB National Congress in Salvador. So you said Lula's historic victory in Brazil could not have happened without millions of people fighting for it. 10 political parties in Brazil, which includes Socialist and Liberty Party, Communist Party of Brazil, PT, Workers' Party of Lula da Silva, coalesced around Lula in order to make sure that Lula emerges as a president of Brazil, including the support of the trade unions. So my question is, what will be your advice if this forum resolved to follow Brazilian route that led to Lula Inácio Luiz da Silva's presidency? We need to strengthen the fragmented left in South Africa and establish a coalition of the left to challenge the status quo and ultimately take over power from the forces of exploitation. That is our question. Thank you very much.
That's up to Comrade from APSA, organizing in the universities.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Comrades, Corbyn, just two questions to you, and perhaps the third one would be a question to the House. My first question is, we all know that Britain is the author of the Balfour Declaration. We all know our history with Britain, that Africa is underdeveloped as a result of British colonialism and European colonialism. So my questions are as follows. Question number one, how do you envision envisioned through socialist British left, not the left that is only in solidarity, but not taking Britain head on for the historic role and their continued role in maintaining Zionism. They still fund it, they still provide solidarity with Netanyahu and diplomatic to Netanyahu. Second question, how can we develop a genuine socialist left in Britain that will be able to join the national liberation struggle and force Britain to pay reparations for years and years of colonialism? The last one perhaps to the House, not to you. How do we synergize all these solidarity protests, not only be centered on Palestine, synergize them with the struggle in Catalonia, Western Sahara, and so forth, because we seem to be working in silos. I thank you very much.
Who is next? I mustn't lose control because of being too democratic. I want you to speak a little bit from the Somali, from the DRC. The solidarity movement exists here in South Africa. We work with them in every possible way. They are great friends and comrades of SAFTU. And thank you very much. Can you say something, Comrade Somali?
Yeah, thank you very much, Comrade. Thank you, the House. Comrade Jeremy, it is a very great honor to meet you in person. The Congolese Solidarity Campaign, we are very grateful to given an opportunity by SAFTU. Ours is not much a question, but a way of seeking solidarity with the people around the world, including the United Kingdom. Comrade, we have written a letter to you that we wanted to hand over to you. We don't want to divulge what is contained in the letter, but all we are asking is a solidarity with the people of Congo. And in that, this year we have met one of your comrades, the British parliamentarian, Kim Johnson, in Cape Town, whom we asked to raise a motion seeking for sanctions to British, to post sanctions to Rwanda. And that sanction, I think a motion has to pass through what you call a petition first. And I don't know how far it is now with the petitions for it to be discussed in your parliament in Britain. So all we are asking is that the comrade around, the solidarity with the people of Congo, we want to learn about the socialism. We are emboldened in Lumumba's vision in order for us to achieve the freedom that we want in Congo is to follow the idea of Lumumba, and that's why Congolese Solidarity Campaign is all about. That's all. Comrade Babu, thank you very much.
Who is next? I see that the POW chairperson of the campaign. Okay, we come it back to you.
Okay.
You will not be discriminated because we are in the front chair.
All right. I don't know which one is. Yeah, thanks, GS. Thanks, the guest. I think my question is around the institutions like the UN, the ICJ, the ICC, to say, how do we process these institutions given its ineffectiveness in stopping the genocide? Like, would you say that this genocide has actually exposed their inability to bring international order? We know there's a warrant of arrest for Benjamin Netanyahu and some of his allies, but that's what it is. It's a warrant of arrest. It doesn't stop the genocide. I mean, what does it mean now? How should we process this institution given this genocide and any future genocide? Should we still believe in this institution that they will bring peace and stability and order? Or should we just say, they are ineffective, completely ineffective? Because as we sit here, the genocide is still continuing. I mean, they can issue more and more warrant of arrest against some of the allies of Benjamin Netanyahu. But what does that mean if the genocide is not stopping? If the kids are still dying? If people are buried under the rubble? Well, what does it mean? And that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, William. Thank you, William. I'm going to go at the back before coming to the table. I'll come to you.
Thank you very much. My name's John, I'm a freelance journalist with a British newspaper called The Eye. I just have a couple of questions for Jeremy. First of all, you mentioned your private members bill that you brought looking to get a Chilcot-style inquiry. Obviously, Keir Starmer works under you as part of your shadow cabinet, as did many of the current British cabinet. Having worked with them quite closely then for all that time, did you feel that this kind of level of cooperation, collaboration with the genocidal Israeli regime was something they were capable of when you worked with them? And then secondly, your new party, or your party as it's probably going to be called, I'm sure you have critics who feel that you shouldn't really be here given the problems that you mentioned with what's happening with that party, particularly between yourself and Zahra Sultana. What does it say about how central the Palestinian cause is to that party that you're here today? Thank you.
Hear you. That's all we can say. Thank you. Everybody is welcome to say something. It's good. It's good. Gabasha Nebasen John Lennon, the crowd force.
Thank you so much, Comrade Gias. Comrade Jeremy, we have last met in February. We were sharing a wonderful platform at the World Convergence Conference organized by War on Want in London. And the discussion was about similar issues of global peace and unity. So I just wanted to thank you for your campaign in making sure that it is not just about Britain that prosper, but the international community also benefits from the important work that you do. I have no question for you. However, I just wanted to emphasize the important points you've made about the importance of workers building branches in communities to sustain worker-led struggles. And I'm saying this because Abahlali have been trying for years to say to workers, you are communities before you become workers. Yes. You are Abahlali before you become workers. What happens when you lose those jobs? You come back to us. In our efforts to do that, workers, I want to generalize this, workers have not found value in the struggle of social movements and communities. And I want to invite workers to see themselves as equal partners with grassroots struggles, employed and unemployed. This is urgent. If we were to win the war that we are discussing, then the worker unity is quite urgent. This is the fundamental question that Comrade Corbyn has raised. And I want to say to workers, to the GS, we have invited workers to our many struggles, and they do not come because they do not see value in our struggle. And this is very painful because we are going nowhere. You cannot confine struggles in your dark corners and expect to win. And I want to say to Comrade Mustafa, I have observed each time we meet the Palestinian comrades, you say something very profound, which you have said it today, and that is what the Pope Francis said when I visited Rome in 2016. In fact, I was asked by Abahlali to bring some material for the Pope to pray for it, together with the South African flag, just for the Pope to pray for it. And the Pope said to us, as this was a global movement on popular, it was a meeting on popular movements organized by the late Pope. The Pope said, you pray for me. And this is exactly what you said today. While we struggle with the pain that you are going through in Palestine, you are actually giving us strength. We are supposed to be giving you solidarity, but you have always transferred those people who feel pity of you, that know you are strong enough. You do not want pity, you want real solidarity. And your determination to yourself governance in Palestine, you have no doubt that you are going to win. And that says a lot about our own humanity. And the last thing I wanted to say, Comrade Mustafa, is that there is a campaign of the Palestinian solidarity in our dark, confined corners of our society, in shared settlements. And unfortunately, because we have not won the attention of the media and everyone else, but I can tell you, our hearts and our souls are with you every day in our monthly general assemblies, in shared settlement of this country. The Palestinian voice and campaign are with us. So the question to you is, what does solidarity look like in our dark, confined corners of our society? What does solidarity mean in those in favelas of Brazil, in the shanty towns of South Africa, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, those who have no money, who have not any value of those who think life is all about status and money? What does solidarity look like? Because we understand solidarity to be deeper than what most people think. They think solidarity is about sometimes physical stuff, to be seen, to be shown, because we have not earned the respect of many people in this country and elsewhere. Our voice is taken for granted, not by the capitalist, but by one of our own. Thank you.
Thank you very much. By the way, Abahlali and Jondo are the heroes. And because as recently as a month ago or so, you stopped a mob of right-wing grouping.
The other one, Comrade Ravi.
A group of right-wing mob that was invading the offices of SERI, which is somewhere at the back there. Yeah. The guys who normally shift all of the crises of the capitalist system, of the mismanagement by the South African government, now in the government of national unity, and the people that we're speaking about that divert attention away from the crisis and blame everything to the migrant. And these guys, Abahlali and John Dolo, occupied the offices of SERI before the xenophobic crowd could have arrived. And when they eventually arrived, they were shocked to their bones to find out that they were actually in small minority in numbers in comparison to the comrades of Abahlali and John Dolo, pledging solidarity with a very important legal institution in the South African context that uses the South African law to defend all the rights of everybody, including those that have no homes and in the flats here that are being blamed for all of the crisis that is facing our cities. Well done, Comrade Zikote and Comrade Mohapi. Nangamso Bekon. Now we have few minutes left. We can't live without a voice. Oh, the last. But it has to go, Comrade Mustafa.
I'll just
we want to respond to Comrade Zikote. Thank you. Please do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, but we have to go because I need to go and see the Palestinian injured children who are here in South Africa to visit them. But I thank you for your presentation, and you asked me what does solidarity mean. Solidarity means a lot. First of all, it has a material effect because actually what you see today in the whole world can be summarized in one phrase, very simple, which is that people's mind, people's work, people's efforts matter. And they matter. And that's why you see Starmer obliged to do this, or Macron or others, because of the power of the solidarity and the power of the people. So that is a very important factor. But there is another factor which is very important. I want you to know, for Palestinians, whatever you do, whatever demonstrations there are, when Jeremy stands up and speaks in front of the people in London, and when we have all these people demonstrating here and other places, it's such a huge moral support to Palestinians. I can never underestimate how important it is, especially to the people of Gaza. When I speak to them, they tell me, we saw, just today I was speaking to them, and they've heard about what we are doing in South Africa, and they say this matters. It gives them a lot of courage and gives them a lot of hope. And my final word is that here in South Africa, I hope you will enhance and increase the boycott, divestment, sanctions campaign. And I think there is no place for this Israeli ambassador to be here in South Africa. And I also ask you, from my own experience dealing with people, please pay attention to the Israeli lobby and its efforts to abuse and misuse the evangelical church to change the course here in South Africa. This is very serious, and it is especially directed at black people. We have to pay attention to that issue, and I hope you will do. And finally, let me tell you that I'm so honored, I'm so pleased to meet all of you, especially you, Ronnie. It's such a pleasure to meet you again. But thank you all. I am so honored and so pleased, and I will go back to Palestine with great feeling of power that you gave us through your solidarity. Thank you for giving me the opportunity, and thank you, Jeremy, also for giving me the time, because it was your time. Thank you.
Literally I transferred my power to Jeremy.
Right now.
Well, Comrade Mustafa, thank you very much for your courage, for your determination, for your clarity in the mind, for the messages of solidarity to South Africa, to the Palestinian masses, and to the working class all over the world. We know that you will be taken care of once you are here. And good luck in seeing the children from Palestine in our institutions here. And long live the people of Palestine. Long live.
Comrade Ellis.
Yes, thank you very much once more for visiting us here, and wonderful job. You have inspired us, just your mere presence in the midst of this massive unfolding genocide, which is now a full ethnic cleansing in overdrive. And that you have survived to be with us here give us hope that indeed you will be free. Thank you very much. Two more last persons. One is already standing. Oh, there's more. But Jeremy have to leave literally in 5 minutes. So in 1 minute.
In 1 minute, yes. 3 words: boycotts, divestments and sanctions. And I think the BDS coalition in South Africa, which I'm representing here, that's what we need. We've made statements, all of us, the trade unions here, SAFTU here, and those are important statements of solidarity. But we really, comrades, need action. We've got a good resolution from the COSATU CC. Now we have to hold those unions accountable to it. And Comrade Safdie is always ahead, I think, in many ways, in challenging the genocide and standing in solidarity with the people of Palestine. And I really hope that we can work together with the trade unions here and the people who are here, the comrades in the room, so we can really get action, because that's what happened in our struggle. And Comrade Jeremy will remember the role that the trade unions played in Britain, particularly in getting a coal embargo when the British Mine Workers Union was on strike, and Margaret Thatcher was trying to bust that strike by buying cheap coal from South Africa. And in solidarity between the mine workers here, who are also on strike, and the mine workers in Britain, and the Liverpool dock workers who refused to unload the coal, they stood in solidarity, and it's that kind of action internationally that helped our liberation movements in our struggle. And so that we really need to show the same kind of commitment, the same kind of solidarity. And just on the question of intersecting struggles, if we remember the words of Samora Machel, who said, international solidarity is not an act of charity. It is an act of unity between allies, fighting on different terrains, but towards the same objectives. The foremost of these objectives is to assist in the development of humanity at the highest possible level. Solidarity is the conscious alliance of the progressive and peace-loving revolutionary forces in the common struggle against colonialism, capitalism, and imperialism. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us in the solidarity movement, to be supporting the struggles of the poor and the oppressed, of the marginalized, to stand with Abu Khlali, as we did against Dudula and its xenophobic street-fighting fascist violence, to stand with workers in struggle. I know there are workers who are being made redundant at the moment and fighting against the same company, Glencore, around these issues. And we need to stand in solidarity with each other's struggles, with the struggles of artisanal miners, with people who are now getting massacred, as they were in Stilfontein recently, working with those communities, because we understand when we're in struggle, we understand each other's struggles, and that it really is a common struggle. And comrades, I think that's what we pledge as the BDS coalition, that as we encourage people to boycott, to divest, and to push our government to impose sanctions, push them to stop coal sales, push them to make policy on cultural and sports boycotts, as Comrade Jeremy mentioned the effectiveness of sports boycotts. We also need to stand in solidarity with each other, with our own struggles here on the ground, because it is one common struggle, and our struggles are intersectional in that sense, of all the oppressed people around the world. Thank you.
And are you insisting?
Thanks, George. Yes.
Don't follow this.
Just 2 minutes. Yeah. I will just go direct to the question. No, thanks very much, GS, for the opportunity. My question would direct to Jeremy. I've got 4 questions. The first one, over the past few years, we have seen the steady rise of the right-wing forces internationally. What do you put this down to? The second one, the weaknesses of left forces also facilitate strengthening the right. What would you say are the main weaknesses of the left? How do we strengthen the working class politically during this period? You have launched an initiative for new political party in Britain, and what prompted this? And what is the politics of the new party, and what are your plans? Lastly, will you be maintaining the links with the trade unions and the Palestine solidarity movement in here, South Africa? Thank you. Thanks.
Last comrade, but not least, the president of Pudemo, Comrade Makaya, can you just do the conclusion? You have an honor now. Thank you.
Viva Pudemo, viva!
Viva! Thank you very much, Comrade GS and
Good afternoon, comrades. I'm going to attempt to be very brief. Let me assure you, Comrade GS. First and foremost, comrades, I think the time has arrived for us to focus on what really matters. The Palestinian cause is now the only remaining obstruction to the Palestinian cause remains the American empire. And what Comrade Mustaf spoke about here, after Comrade Ronnie's input in terms of the danger to diffuse the swelling mass support of that struggle, remains Donald Trump and the American empire. And I think we need to summon GS the necessary stamina and appetite to confront the American empire, because it contributes decisively to the arms that the Israelis are using to kill Palestinians.
Exactly.
The mere fact that Netanyahu addressed an empty hole in the UN is indicative of how vacuous the Israeli, in terms of Netanyahu as the face of it, has become to the rest of the world. But we can't say that about the American empire. And I think we need to have the courage, comrades, in honor of the massive sacrifices of the people of Palestine, to stand up to American bully. And as we talk about boycotting Israeli goods, let us see how we can extend to American goods too.
Thank you.
But also build alliances with the progressive forces in the United States of America. Comrade Jeremy, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for remaining true and steadfast in supporting the struggle of the workers and the struggle for humanity. You have indeed reproduced yourself in the United Kingdom, like the comrade from DRC said. We in Swaziland work very closely with Comrade Kim, and we requested her, and we are hopeful that you are going to work together in the parliament in the US to discuss the issue of the Swazi problem that you left with us there in Swaziland when you transferred public power to a family, as opposed to transferring it to the people that were under British rule. We need that power so that the people of Swaziland can exercise their autonomy and supremacy. Lastly, to the two leaders, quickly, Comrade President, thank you very much for sharing the special day of Abahlali. We know it's your birthday, but we have chosen us to spend your birthday with. This speaks volumes about the depth of internationalism in that movement. We value you, you remain our ally. And finally, Comrade GS and the leadership of SAFTU, thank you very much for refusing to look the other way. We have always known that with SAFTU, we have a reliable ally that we can always count on. And today we just celebrate all of you, comrades, who took your time to be with us here. And indeed, Comrade Jeremy, thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade President Makanya. And now let's do the conclusion by Comrade Jeremy, who we have kept beyond the time. And we know that we are now under real pressure. So, yet we want you to see the conclusions.
Thank you. We're all under pressure all the time. And I'm really not trying to chair the meeting.
Okay.
You're okay with that?
No, I'm fine.
Could I just say a big thank you to all of you, but also a particular big thank you to Steve and Jane Faulkner. Used to live in my constituency in Finsbury Park and always ensured I was on the straight and narrow on all political thinking at all times. Wonderful comrades to have, and always so very, very well informed about everything all over the world. Thank you very much. There's a lot of questions. I'll try and answer them as best I can, but as the chair pointed out, I'm going to have to leave fairly soon. The first one was about Brazil, the Workers' Party, and Lula's election. I've been in Brazil quite a few times in my life. I've always been impressed by it. I admire so much about Brazil, but the issues are so huge, and and the pressures on anyone on the political left are so enormous. I first went to Brazil in 1969 when it was under military government, and witnessed then, as a young man, the brutality of the police in Brazil, dealing with student unrest and any other workers' activities. And so there is a whole history, a whole culture of oppression of the left in Brazil, which many people outside don't always fully understand. Lula's rise through being a trade union organiser and trade unionist was remarkable and incredible, but to win an election was an amazing achievement the first time round. And then his disgraceful, the attacks that were made on him, his removal from office, and his imprisonment for a very long period of time, and he was always acknowledged the solidarity support that we gave him when I was leader of the Labour Party, from the Labour Party to him as an imprisoned leader. And I also worked very closely with Dilma Rousseff, his successor as president, who is now working for the BRICS financial institutions and banks. And I was there for the last election when Lula was indeed elected. And I went there sort of imagining that the campaign was so powerful and so good, there's no way Lula could actually lose it. It was only when I arrived there I realised two things. One is the power of the media in Brazil and the power of the evangelical church in Brazil to attack Lula and attack others. And whilst I was in Sao Paulo, which is overwhelmingly pro-Lula, overwhelmingly Workers' Party, there was never any question that Sao Paulo was going to vote overwhelmingly for him. You only had to go literally an hour's drive out of Sao Paulo and it's totally different, right-wing forces everywhere trying to obstruct the vote and everything else, and Bolsonaro behind it. And I was there in the big centre where Lula was, waiting for the election result to come through, and we're watching the results coming in, and it was terrifying. We got well beyond 50% of the vote counted, and he was still way behind. So we're just looking at these screens thinking, is this going to be the big defeat where Bolsonaro wins? And it was only when we got to, from memory, over 60% of the vote counted, when Lula went ahead by 0.1%, 0.1%. And everybody started cheering. I said, what? You're 0.1% ahead. You can't be cheering when you're 0.1% ahead and there's 40% of the vote still to be counted. Anyhow, he did win in the end, but it was pretty close, and there were attempts then by the far right to remove him from office. And so don't underestimate the money, the organisation and the power of the far right in Brazil to attack what is a popular president, or who is a popular president trying to eliminate poverty in his society. What's the strength of the Workers' Party is that it's based in the grassroots, that it's based within communities. And I witnessed this very much when I went to a housing development, a very big, what in England we'd call a council housing development, but it's not called that there, which was built as a cooperative, as a hangover from the first Lula administration when they put a lot of money into cooperatives. And it was this huge development with very nice flats and open space, so it was really impressive development. So I was asked if I wanted to look around and see people's homes, and I did. So I went to one woman's house and I asked her what it was like there, and so I said, very nice, liked it. And she said the one thing she'd always dreamt of all her life was to have a table where her children could sit round and eat a meal with her. Her one dream was to have a table to sit down at. Said she'd never had that before. They'd always lived in such tiny places with no space. She'd never been able to sit down for a meal with her own children. And she said this to her was what had been achieved by the Workers' Party. And it puts it into perspective, the horrors of life of many of the poorest people, in South Africa as well, and in Brazil. And so let's express our solidarity with Lula and his efforts to try and bring about a ceasefire in Ukraine when no other world leader was remotely interested in that. Well done, Lula, and I think he deserves our support. There's many other questions. I'll be very quick. The point about the Balfour Declaration and the historic role of of Britain is, of course, absolutely correct. The Balfour Declaration was done in 1917, and it is, well, you know the wording of it, you know what it's about. Interestingly, and this is historically factual, there were two Jewish members of the British cabinet at that time who both opposed the Balfour Declaration. Why? Because they said this declaration, which was very much a Zionist endeavour, will actually increase anti-Semitism in Britain and all around Europe. They actually opposed it because they could see the consequences of it. And so that declaration is still there, as of course is the other consequence of that period, which is the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which divided up the whole region between Britain and France, which led to the Mandate and all that. So let's understand the colonial thinking that brought all this about in our solidarity with the Palestinian people. Because that same colonial thinking, as I said when I spoke earlier, brought about the 1884 Congress of Berlin, which drew all these convenient straight lines on maps all over the continent of Africa. And we have to just remember the colonial heritage lives on forever. The second point you made in your question was about reparations. And you're quite correct. When the slave trade and then slavery ended, or the other way around rather, in Britain and the British Empire, the bill to end slavery came from somebody called William Wilberforce, and he's credited with ending slavery. It's complete nonsense. All he did was introduce a bill in Parliament. The real ending of slavery in the British colonies came from the slaves themselves in Western Jamaica and in Morant Bay. Their uprisings and their preventing any sugar being exported to Britain and the rest of Europe made the sugar owners in a very difficult situation because they got no sugar to sell, and that brought about the end of slavery. Slavery was ended by the slaves' uprising and the slaves' intelligence in organising together to achieve that. The slave owners were compensated massively, and that compensation was not finally paid off by Britain until 2015. Get that, 2015, almost 200 years later, that compensation was still being paid. So I've been working with people in Jamaica and other places on reparations movements, and we've got a conference in London in 2 weeks' time led by Bel Ibero-Adi, one of the members of the British Parliament whose family come from Africa, and others come together on it. And we are campaigning for a reparations movement, which isn't just about returning historical artifacts to where they should never have been stolen. It is also about the economic relationship between the slave controllers and the colonialists and those countries concerned. Yes, returning the artifacts is important, but that's not the whole story. And so that we're working on, and thank you very much for that question. And the point on the DRC and Kim Johnson, yes, I have been working with Kim Johnson. I know Kim Johnson very well, of course, and she's talked to me about Swaziland and about the DRC. I have a large number of people in the constituency I wanted to represent who come from the DRC, and indeed I've been twice in the DRC with them, and we'll be working on that. The DRC has been most grotesquely exploited, and Patrice Lumumba's very short term in office gave such high hopes to so many people. Never forget the great works of Patrice Lumumba because of what he achieved in bringing about independence in Congo and giving an inspiration to what African independence could bring. The points on the private members bill I've made, I put that forward. We then held the public inquiry on it. Thanks for your comments about your party. Yeah, there are some difficulties in the foundation of a new party. That party is based on redistribution of wealth and power. That party is based on eliminating poverty within the UK. That party is based on environmental sustainability. That party is based on opposing the rise of the far right and racism within our society rather than the blame culture against refugees and migrants. And that party is based absolutely on international peace and solidarity, obviously with the Palestinian people, but with people all over the world. It doesn't have policies, but it hasn't actually been formally established as a party. But that is the basic message we sent out to set the party up. And that is the voice I'm determined it will be. And that will be the basic grounding principles of it. What we surely need for the left around the world is the ability to work together effectively and quickly. And I think the struggle of the Palestinian people, union actions in stopping exports, union actions in Italy and other places, are an example of what trade unions can achieve globally. But we need systems of rapid communication, systems of rapid support, so we can take action very, very quickly. And so the decision of the Italian workers to say that if a flotilla is attacked, they will go on strike action, that's an important point of solidarity, and there are plenty of others. And so this wonderful meeting this afternoon, I've learnt a lot from it. Thank you very much for inviting me on it. But what we do need is to work much closer together in the future, and that's certainly what I want to achieve, because the rise of the far right is obviously terrifying around the world. Terrifying because of the stupidity and simplicity of their arguments and the way that they're given so much space by the popular media. I'll give you an example. In Britain, Nigel Farage, whose party has fewer members of parliament than the independent group that I'm a member of, gets wall-to-wall coverage on the media every day, all day long, with this ridiculous simplistic message about boat people and so on. At no stage does the humanity of the individual come into it. At no stage does the reason why people seek asylum. I'll give you an example. I went to Calais. I've been to Calais a number of times. I sat down with some people there who were trying to cross the channel. They were trying to get a boat to go to Britain. They were quite open about it. That's what they wanted to do. Why? Because they'd been in Afghanistan, because they'd worked for the British Army, because they were no longer safe in Afghanistan, and because they were very poor. And they felt that if they got out, they might have a chance of surviving somewhere else around the world. Are they the cause of the world's problems? Did they start the war in Afghanistan? Did they start the war in Iraq? Did they bring about global instability? They are victims. Let's not blame the victims, blame the perpetrators of the wars and the perpetrators of the injustice. So it is about solidarity at a trade union level, and above all, it's about education. Thank you very, very much for your kindness in welcoming me here this afternoon. I'm sorry it's taken me a long time to get back to South Africa, but I'll be here again much sooner next time. Thank you.
Nobody moves, we remain in our seats, and we allow Comrade Jeremy and the comrades who are accompanying him to the next appointment, and we thank him from the bottom of our hearts for spending the whole afternoon with us, for sharing his thoughts and wisdom, for inspiring us, and for committing himself and the movement to a common struggle with us, a struggle for humankind, for solidarity that knows no borders, a just struggle that we know we will win eventually. It was a very good weekend. On the 97th minute, 97 minutes, Arsenal won the game. And we know what that meant to you. Congratulations, sir.
Does this mean we're going to win the Premiership?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Can we take a vote on that? Will Arsenal win the Premiership? Don't divide us.
You are released, comrade. Thank you
Thanks
very
a lot.
much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. There's a letter from the Congo.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Thank you very much.
We remain in our seats, comrades.
Thank you, Bill. Picture of the letter. Would somebody take one of mine?
Yeah, sure. Don't leave
Just to us receiving the
until
letter.
our visitor leaves.
There we go. There we go. Yes. This is on Comrade Jeremy's phone.
Does the letter contain a list of new
So
articles?
that the Comrade Jeremy must remember in London. Thank you.
You identify
About the movement for death in reparation.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Just one I just want to be next to the president.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.